Reservoir Dogs is Quentin Tarantino's first full-length film. It's an indie movie made on a very low budget, and it gave the then-unknown director worldwide fame, becoming a cult classic for millions of viewers.
Want to shoot me, you little piece of shit? Go ahead, take a shot.
You, White. I didn't create this situation. I'm dealing with it. You're acting like a first-year fucking thief.
But if you ask an average Tarantino fan what this movie is about, you probably won't get a clear answer. Some might talk about the director's signature dialogue. Others might mention the music, the atmosphere, or the images of the criminals.
Whoa. Time out, Green. They tell that fucking bullshit to the tourists.
But the plot itself? Not so much. And that's not surprising. Even many movie critics can't really explain what the movie is about. They talk about references, Easter eggs, dialogue, character details, but the actual message of the film stays hidden. In this video, we're going to break it down. So, what is Reservoir Dogs really about? Let's figure it out. If we forget about the unusual order of scenes that Tarantino uses, the plot is actually very simple. A gang of criminals, after a failed robbery, tries to figure out who among them is the traitor.
So who's the rat this time? For all I know, you're the rat.
For all I know, you're the fucking rat.
For all we know, he's the rat.
Along the way, they lose trust in each other, which leads to tragic consequences. In the end, everyone dies.
Stop pointing that fucking gun at my dad!
The whole movie revolves around the robbery. There's a whole genre of films about heists, like The Italian Job, The Thomas Crown Affair, Now You See Me, Catch Me If You Can, and, of course, Ocean's 11.
Mr. Ocean, what do you think you would do if released?
When was the last time you were in Vegas?
What, you want to knock over a casino?
These movies often mix action, well-developed characters, and deep moral dilemmas. They show how far people will go for money or principles. The climax is always the heist itself, the most exciting and intense part of the story. But here's the thing. In Reservoir Dogs, do we even see the heist? No. We're shown the planning.
Escape is over, and I'm sure it's going to be a successful one. Hell, we get down to Hawaiian Islands. I'll roll and laugh with all of you.
The chase. The aftermath.
You're hurt real fucking bad. But you ain't dying.
But the actual crime happens off-screen. And that's no accident, because this movie is not really about the robbery. So, what is it about? To understand this, we need to look at a few key ideas. Think about the first scenes of the movie. A group of men is talking about Madonna's song Like a Virgin, trying to figure out what it's really about. At first glance, it seems like a regular conversation. Lots of jokes, sharp comments, funny lines. It feels like it has nothing to do with the plot.
I've got Madonna's big dick coming out of my left ear, and Toby the Jap, I don't know what, coming out of my right.
But then they move on to another topic, whether or not to tip waitresses. Mr. Pink refuses to do so.
I don't tip.
You don't tip?
No, I don't believe in it.
This moment will play a role later. Similar conversations happen throughout the film. The characters talk about movies,
This cat is like Charles Bronson in The Great Escape. He's big in tunnels.
music,
You guys been listening to K. Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s weekend?
Yeah, man, it's fucking great, isn't it?
baseball,
Brewers. Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah. Apparently they won the night before. He made a killing off him.
women,
All right, I'm trying to tell a story here. One night, she plays it real cool. She waits for this bag of shit to get drunk.
It might seem like just chatter, but these talks actually build a socio-cultural code. A socio-cultural code is a set of symbols, norms, and values that shape the views and behavior of people within a certain society.
It's like Charles Bronson.
K. Billy's big ass in from Madonna.
Brewers.
Tony DeFranco and the Franco family.
The night the lights went out in Georgia came on. I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan, aren't you?
Lee Marlon Brando.
You remember the Fantastic Four? Christy Love was like a Pam Grier TV show without Pam Grier.
One employee who thinks he's Charles Bronson.
It's formed over time and includes traditions, religion, music, movies, sports preferences, and even ways of communicating. This code determines how people see the world, how they interact with each other, and how they interpret different events. Essentially, it's a us versus them system that helps people form groups. Remember how Mr. Orange became part of the gang? It's simple. He used their code. He played poker like they did, spoke their language. That was the key to earning their trust.
I told him it was Long Beach Mike I did the poker game with. A nice guy called him to check it out and said it was A-okay.
The same thing happens in other scenes. For example, when Mr. Blonde fights with Mr. White.
Are you gonna bark all day, little doggy? Or are you gonna bite? What was that?
But the tension eases as soon as they realize they're both fans of the same actor, Lee Marvin.
I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan, aren't you? Yeah, me too. I love that guy.
So, the whole gang isn't just a group of criminals. They're part of different social groups. Music fans,
I used to like early stuff, Borderline.
movie lovers,
I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan, aren't you?
sports enthusiasts,
Brewers.
poker players,
I did the poker game with.
and believers.
Do I want any one of you to relate to each other by your Christian names.
But in this case, what unites them is something bigger. It's a group of people with their own laws, their own terminology, their own rules.
Nobody had anything. People were living on resin, smoking the wood in their pipes for months. This chick had a bunch.
They see themselves as one team until a traitor appears and everything starts falling apart. Notice how the characters are shown in the opening credits. They all look almost the same. Classic suits, white shirts, the same hairstyles, black shoes, and sunglasses. Except for the leaders, everyone is dressed the same. This is another example of the socio-cultural code. For example, Mr. Orange's friend wears a green cap with a red star.
No. Long Beach Mike is not your fucking amigo, man. Long Beach Mike is a fucking scumbag. He's selling out his amigos.
This is also part of the socio-cultural code, referring to a specific historical and political context tied to revolution and socialism. To become part of the gang, Mr. Orange needs to fully learn their rules.
It's the details that sell your story.
From the very beginning, they are depersonalized.
Do I want any one of you to relate to each other by your Christian names.
No one is supposed to use their real name. Now, they are not just people, but
Mr. Brown, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink.
But isn't this something that happens in real life too? We all get labeled based on our social status. You're a student, you're a retiree, you're an office worker, you're a Christian, you're a blogger, you're an atheist. People are united by ideologies, musical tastes, professions, or even by subscribing to the same channel. In this sense, Mr. Pink is the one who goes against the system.
You don't tip?
I don't tip because society says I have to. All right, I mean, I'll tip if somebody really deserves a tip. If they really put forth the effort, I'll give them something extra. But I mean, this tipping automatically, it's for the birds.
Why should I tip? Because it's what you're supposed to do. But he's quickly made to understand that arguing is pointless.
Come on, you. Cough up a bucket, cheap bastard. I paid for your goddamn breakfast. Don't mind what you normally would do. Just cough in your goddamn bucket like everybody else.
The situation repeats itself when they get their names.
Why am I Mr. Pink? Why can't we pick our own colors?
If you disagree, it doesn't matter, you're still Pink.
No way. I pick. You're Mr. Pink. Now listen up, Mr. Pink. There's two ways you can go on this job. My way or the highway.
Whoever pays sets the rules.
I paid for your goddamn breakfast.
If you're against it,
Or the highway.
it's interesting that Mr. Pink turns out to be the smartest. He's the only one who understands there's a traitor among them.
That's not correct. The cops did not show up after the alarm went off. I mean, that's how I know we were set up.
All of this is the socio-cultural code. It helps them work as one team. As long as everyone follows the rules, the system works. But once a triggering event happens, the whole structure falls apart like a house of cards. During the heist, something unexpected happens. One of the guys starts shooting.
Man, could you believe Mr. Blonde?
That was the most insane fucking thing I've ever seen. Why the fuck would Joe hire a guy like that?
Cops show up, and everything goes off plan. Now, the team that was just working so well together falls apart.
For all I know, you're the rat.
Well, I know you're the fucking rat.
All right, now you're using your fucking head.
Each person is left to face their own fears and suspicions, which completely destroys their unity. It turns out Mr. Blonde is just a psychopath and a sadist.
Can't work with a guy like that. Can't work with a psychopath. You don't know what those sick assholes are going to do next.
As soon as he has suspicions, he starts shooting at everyone without hesitation, nearly killing his own team.
We're awful goddamn lucky he didn't tag us when he shut the place up. I came this close to taking his ass out myself.
When the others panic and scatter, he, for some reason, doesn't seem in a rush. He calmly stops by,
Big Kahuna Burger. That's that Hawaiian burger joint.
grabs a sprite,
Right, good.
and drives to the meeting spot with a cop in his trunk.
You kids shouldn't play so rough. Somebody's gonna start crying.
It's the blood.
This shows his complete cold-bloodedness.
Are you gonna bark all day, little doggy? Or are you gonna bite?
And, most likely, antisocial personality disorder. Unlike the others, he barely feels fear, which makes him even more dangerous. Mr. White is his complete opposite. He's emotional and compassionate. He cares for the wounded Mr. Orange and drags him along.
You're gonna be okay. Now say it. You're gonna be okay. Say it!
He's concerned about what will happen to him. When White gets nervous, he starts scratching his hair.
Things get tense. It's human nature. You panic. I don't care what your name is. You can't help it.
And you give yourself a couple of seconds, you get a hold of the situation, you deal with it. What you don't do.
This mechanical action helps him cope with anxiety. At one point, he even unconsciously smooths Mr. Orange's hair, even though it makes no sense. The opposite of both of them is Mr. Pink. While White acts on emotion and Blonde acts without emotion, Pink is about reason and logic.
We got a playground here, huh? Am I the only professional?
He's the only one who tries to stay calm. He's the one who questioned why he should tip,
I don't tip.
got upset about the code names,
Why can't we pick our own colors?
and was the first to realize there's a traitor among them.
I mean, that's how I know we were set up.
But if he's so smart, why did he end up in this situation?
What am I doing here, man?
Maybe in some way he's dependent. For example, he says he quit smoking, but then asks for a cigarette.
Have a cigarette.
I quit.
All right.
Why, you got one?
He suspected the job was too risky, but still agreed to it.
You know what's so funny about this job right off? As soon as I felt it, I should have said no thank you and walked, but I didn't fucking listen.
As for Mr. Orange, he turned out to be the cop who betrayed them all. But he got so deep into this socio-cultural code that he began to lose his own identity. When he makes a break for it, his instincts take over, and he shoots back, killing an innocent woman.
Get in the fucking car!
From the start, he feels respect and trust towards Mr. White.
Do right by him. He's a good guy. I wouldn't be inside if it wasn't for him.
No.
White tries to help him until the very end, encouraging him as much as he can. Eventually, the bond between them becomes so strong that Orange can't hold back and reveals his secret. Even though he knows this puts him at risk. At the end of the film, Joe Cabot arrives at the warehouse and announces that he knows who the rat is. Tension builds. He accuses Mr. Orange of being an undercover cop.
That lump of shit's working with the LAPD.
Mr. White refuses to believe it.
Joe, I don't know what you think you know, but you're wrong.
Like hell I am.
Joe, trust me on this. You've made a mistake.
Leading to the classic Mexican standoff, where everyone points guns at each other. A shootout follows, and nearly the entire team is killed.
Stop pointing that fucking gun at my dad!
Mr. Pink tries to escape, but most likely dies during his capture. Mr. White, upon learning that Orange really was a cop, kills him before being killed by the police himself.
Drop the fucking gun!
I'm gonna fucking blow you away!
In the end, the team, which once seemed united, completely falls apart, and no one comes out victorious. The film shows how a group of people, united by one goal, can appear as a single entity. But when conflict arises, it becomes clear that each participant has their own motivations, character, and beliefs. Before the crisis, the criminals seemed faceless, just part of the gang. But when the plan falls apart, their true personalities come through. One is a psychopath, another is an empath. Some act logically, some impulsively, and one turns out to be a traitor. Reservoir Dogs is a clash of collectivism and individualism. At first glance, the characters work as a team, each having their role. But as soon as things go off plan, the collective unity breaks down, and each person starts thinking only of themselves, revealing their true moral principles. The same thing happens in our society. We all belong to different social groups, united by common goals and rules.
Mr. Brown, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink. I pick.
But as soon as external conditions change, for example, a new law is passed or there's an economic crisis, unity disappears.
And that was the plan. We meet here.
Well, then where the fuck is everybody? I say the plan becomes null and void once we find out we got a rat in the house.
Making way for disagreements and conflicts. This film makes us think about how strong our social connections really are and what truly unites us. We're used to seeing people through labels: programmer, teacher, student, retiree, entrepreneur. But behind each label is a complex, multifaceted individual with their own thoughts, emotions, and experiences. And when the situation gets out of control, each person's true nature inevitably comes to light. We get used to these categories because they simplify our world, making it more predictable and understandable. But at the same time, these labels narrow our perception, forcing us to see a person only as a representative of a certain group. In such a society, it's difficult to go beyond the imposed roles and find our true identity. The individual starts to fade under the weight of social expectations and stereotypes. And at some point, we ourselves begin to associate with the labels that have been placed on us. But a person is not just a set of characteristics. They are more than the sum of their roles. Therefore, it's important to strive to see the real people behind the labels, with their complex and contradictory inner worlds, and to remember that each of us cannot be simply categorized.
You guys got the goddamn message?
Reservoir Dogs also shows how extreme situations can serve as a catalyst for revealing a person's true nature. In everyday life, many of us hide our true feelings and motives, but in a crisis or survival situation, when we have to choose between ourselves and others, our true essence comes to the surface. The film makes us think, can we really trust those we share common goals with? Finally, I'd like to point out that the main character of this film, in my opinion, is Mr. Orange. He is the one who infiltrates the gang, initially pretending to be one of them, but in reality carrying out his undercover mission. At the center of the events is his double life and moral dilemmas. He is the one who sets off the chain of events that leads to the complete destruction of the team. Mr. Orange becomes the catalyst for all the conflicts, exposing the true nature of the other members. He is the one who changes and ultimately confesses that he's a cop, even though he didn't have to. This is his story. And there's an interesting point in this story related to the preparation for infiltrating the gang. Here, there's a thought that I believe belongs not so much to the character, but to Quentin Tarantino himself.
It's the details that sell your story. You gotta know if they got paper towels or a blower to dry your hands. You gotta know if they got liquid soap or that pink granulated powdered shit they used to use in high school, remember? You gotta know if they got hot water or not. If it stinks, sprayed diarrhea all over one of the bowls. You gotta know every detail there is to know about this commode. What you gotta do, take all them details, man, and make them your own.
And this phrase perfectly illustrates his next film.
What kind of hamburgers?
Cheeseburgers.
No. Where'd you get them? McDonald's, Wendy's, Jack in the Box, where?
It's little differences. I mean, they got the same shit over there that they got here, but it's just there, it's a little different.
It's the details that sell your story.
Pulp Fiction, which I've already analyzed on the channel. It's there that I touch upon the importance of details. So, if you haven't seen that review yet, the link to the video will now appear on your screen. I'll also duplicate it in the description.